Hello everyone, I'm Jacques Lacombe. I'm a guest conductor for a wonderful program I have the pleasure to conduct with the Edmonton Symphony, this time welcoming also Lara St John, one of the great violinists from Canada. It's always a pleasure to be back with this orchestra. I've been, I guess, a regular guest conductor with the Edmonton Symphony for quite a few years now. And it's always a great pleasure to make music with these wonderful musicians, and I look forward to this concert on May 1st, 2010. The Sibelius Violin Concerto is one of those pieces that I can't really pinpoint the first time I heard the piece. It seems to have been part of my life since day one. It's a piece I've known for a long time. The very first time I conducted the piece, I worked on the piece, was when I was studying in Vienna, and it has always been one of my favorite violin concertos to conduct. I've conducted quite a few times. This last time I did was with Lara Chang a couple of years ago with Montreal Symphony, and it's I'm always fascinated to see. I'm not a violinist, but I know it's a very demanding solo part, but all of that violin writing seems to be serving only that purpose of this poetry that Sibelius has always in his music. And you know, from the very first few bars of the concerto, you're already in this amazing mood, and it's just probably one of his greatest quality. And I don't understand why his symphonies, for instance, aren't performed more often, because this is a composer who has this ability to, again, create from the start of a movement very specific moods that very few composers have managed to express in such an artful way. So it's really a wonderful masterpiece. Chausson's music, it's very interesting, it's strange, because it's like a lot of the French music of that period, the second half of the 19th century. It's hard to explain exactly why this music is not part of the regular standard repertoire. The only piece I could think of that period would be the Franck D minor symphony, and they're pretty close to each other. Franck was Chausson's teacher. I would say that the reason that this repertoire is not so regularly performed is mostly because, first of all, in France itself, this repertoire, they still don't need how to deal with that period. Possibly because we're in the very heart of the extreme romanticism in this music. That's reason number one. Reason number two is a lot of composers in France and also in Belgium for this period had this fascination for Wagner. And so there was this movement in France of this love and hate relationship with Wagner. And Chausson, like Franck again, were great admirers of the operas by Wagner. They went to Bayreuth, and they really followed this path. So with this music, you have some sort of a mixture of French sensitivity with sort of a German sound attached to it. And I would also add to this that being an organist, having been, in a past life an organist, a lot of this music, especially in orchestral writing, is quite close to the organ literature of that period as well. So when you conduct and when you work on a piece like that, you have to think a bit in terms of an organ sound. So this big, round, fat sound that could be so gorgeous and so fascinating to hear. And I would say, especially in a concert hall like the one you have here, I think it's going to be served very well, because you have this depth of the sound, that exactly what you need for this kind of music, which is not exactly the same thing if you think about music by Debussy or Ravel, which they aim much more in a sort of a clarity environment. But with Chausson, we want to have this big bass sound, and we're going to have a lot of fun working on that. Having been a conductor for over 25 years, it's not always easy to explain why orchestra musicians get excited about a piece, or I think in the Chausson, with my previous experiences, it's not so much a piece, it also like the music by Lalo is like that also, where individual musicians aren't necessarily put on the spot to shine. In the symphony, perhaps the principal trumpet has a bit of more exposed moments, but with pieces like that, you really have to come to it as an ensemble and play your part as being part of this whole picture and mixing your individual tones to the bigger, the broader image. And I think that's where musicians find their satisfaction in a piece like that, is being part of this big, as I explained earlier, this big round sound, and through that you sort of change the colors, the shade, and also be ready to be part of something of a darker mood, perhaps in places. Once again, it's a bit like Wagner. You have to think in a different time. Music doesn't necessarily happen as quickly as it would. Sometimes you have to think of very, very long, very broad phrases, and that's where I think musicians find their satisfaction in performing a piece like that. The piece was commissioned to Jacques Hétu to commemorate the 375th anniversary of my hometown, Trois-Rivières. So Jacques Hétu was born in Trois-Rivières, so we talked about doing something that would speak about the history of the city. So it's kind of a trip throughout the time. So it includes, of course, music for that depicts the landscape. So we are, as the name of the city tells it, Trois-Rivières. So we're by the St-Maurice River and also by the St-Maurice River, and so the city was very close to producing paper and stuff like that. The piece will speak also about there's an Indian chant as part of the piece. So it's a trip through the time of the history of Trois-Rivières, like a tone poem in a couple of different sections. And it's it speaks about what we are, what we were at first. So you also have bird songs in there. So the nature is also present because we're close to water, we're close to wonderful forests as well. So and I was very happy to know that Edmonton Symphony had accepted to put that on the program, and I see it as part of a tribute that Edmonton is paying to Trois-Rivières in this year of celebration.